gallery, and 2 others around town. Most of you already know Teri pretty well, so I'll just be very brief. Your background is basically you grew up with difficult experiences in Baltimore, Maryland. Became a award-winning stage actress. You literally ran off to the circus.
I had to audition.
You and your husband Mac moved here to Louisville, and you started creating. Well, first you started doing quilts, and then that kind of shifted into doing an art class. That got you into doing painting and drawing. That got you later into collage work and everything else. Yeah. And here we are. Let's have a seat.
Yeah. Okay. If I can sit in this dress. It's like Lucy, that time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really, truly appreciate you.
So first, I'll just start talking about some of the collage aspects of your work. So moving from fiber to painting on canvas and drawing and into collage, how does material inform the meaning of your artwork? Or what does the use of collage or paper inform about your work that wasn't there with painting on canvas?
Well, paper to me is so full of emotion. It's that theater ticket, it's a love letter, it's your high school diploma. So it's just really fecund with feelings. And I felt like as a painter, I couldn't get there with the brush far away from me and painting that way. I realized that I was not a gestural painting, that I like being on top of the work. And with paper, whatever kind of paper one uses, it's going to create a different result. If I use, say, paper from an old bunch of vintage wallpapers, where the quilt right here is, it's very different from when I was doing my Japanese style work, because I was using washi paper and various other forms. And when I traveled to Europe and saw those beautiful old posters falling from the walls, there's something about that was just so beautiful to me, because I love things that are discarded. That gives you a whole different thing. So with paper, I felt like I was always experimenting with something new. It was just different every time, and that kept my interest alive.
Yeah. Was there ever an aha moment when you realized working with collage and it was the kind of the direction that you're wanting to head towards?
I think so, and I can't really pinpoint when it was, but I did realize at one point that I was a much better collage artist than a painter. There are so many great painters out there, and I just thought, but I use paint still to fill in certain areas that maybe the paper doesn't. But my love of paper is just very deep.
Yeah, I totally understand that. That's why I own the gallery or curate or whatever, because there's so many artists doing so many different things that I can't say or do and better than I could do. So I'd rather show off other people's work.
I love your paintings.
Can you describe your process when you're working on a new piece? How do you balance the intuition versus the logical aspects of making stuff, or the chaos, balancing chaos and order?
I always start with a piece of paper. It could be a scrap that I found on the street. It could be, just any kind of paper. That's usually my muse. And then from there, I'll take that piece of paper and see what looks good next to that paper. All the while, when you do art for a long time and you learn all the rules, you then have to kind of put them on the back burner and then just know that you know it and be confident in that. So to take the piece of paper and lay it down, and then to find something that complements it, and then something that complements that, and this back and forth, it's like a puzzle, trying to fit all the pieces together so that in the end, when you look at it, you can say, okay, that's what I'm trying to say. And sometimes it comes immediately, sometimes it takes a while, sometimes I have to rip papers off and put something else down. Sometimes I paint over it and start again, and because it's all mostly intuitive, with just the the knowledge that I have to think about composition, and I have to think about color, and I have to think about those kinds of things, it just kind of will eventually come together. And when it does, only then do I feel like I can varnish it and name it and sign it.
Is it hard to figure out like when that end point is?
No, it isn't. I usually, most of the time I can finish it and step away from it. Every now and then there will be something that bothers me and I'll have to keep going up to it. But for the most part, when something is done, I can say, yeah, that's it. And then I have to turn it around so I don't look at it anymore. Otherwise, I'll work it to death.
Yeah. So you've been working in collage for a while, but a lot of your material that you would collage with is large. A lot of it was items that you produced yourself. Whether it was painting on the paper and then tearing that up and reconfiguring the painted paper that you created, or even adding other elements, wood or fiber pieces that you would construct and add to the plane or whatever. This show is really the first time I've seen more material sourced from other sources that you didn't create originally, that were representational elements, like the face and real fake. There's a lot more of that in these than what I've noticed before. Can you tell us more about sourcing your collage materials and your thought process behind sourcing them?
So this time last year, I spent a couple of weeks in Italy at an artist residency, and it's very Catholic, and I grew up Catholic, and it has a lot about family everywhere. And it started with me using photographs from the 50s and 60s of these Italian folks. I found them in a box in an antique store. And there was something about it that really touched me in terms of family. And so when I started using that, I started thinking of my own life and my family and the elements from my life that somehow the memories clung to: wallpaper, lace, pictures from Look magazine, and this vintage wallpaper that I found that was just a gold mine. That the quilt here is made from that, and I think it's in just about every single piece. There's some of that wallpaper in there because wallpaper represents, home. It's on the walls, and it was harder to have those kinds of things in my family. But anyway, it brought that up for me. So I started feeling like these were the papers I needed to use, and sewing, because both of my grandmothers were quilters. It skipped over my mom, but I had always wanted to learn how to sew or quilt, and I could, put a button on a pair of pants, but I really wanted to learn how to quilt, and that's basically what got me into art in the long run. And so, yeah, that's my how I figured out this particular show and why I am using these materials. Some of the materials in here are also handmade paper that I did with my friend Gail, wherever she is. There's a little bit in there, Gail. And there you are. We make just more tactile stuff, string and paper. Anyway.
Yeah, memories. So you grew up in Baltimore.
Yes.
It was sort of, you had it not the easiest of lives back then. And you also, another part of your life, you joined the circus, became a clown. A lot of people know. Now,
no, she didn't, apparently.
I'll admit that the majority of what I know about Baltimore comes from watching The Wire.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my dad.
So just keeping that point of perspective in mind, I want to read a part of your artist statement, okay?
Okay.
And I quote, "I grew up in a house of paper that could burn up, rip apart, or blow away at any given moment. I learned very early in life that nothing lasts, not love, home, or family, and that I couldn't trust a soul like a feral cat." That is a side of Teri Dryden I was not familiar with at all. And, many clowns are known to carry around things like buckets of confetti and whatever. That Baltimore-born clown sounds more likely to carry a shank on him.
Yeah.
How does the dynamic of humor and hardship play out in life,
boy.
and how does that show up in your artwork?
Oh, well, I hope a little bit of a sense of humor shows up in my artwork, but I'm not sure. It's there. I mean, this is about my mother, and these lipsticks they also look like bullets. So that was kind of my thing. It's like, that's my mother.
Hardship and humor.
Yeah. My family, until my father left us when I was 16, we were funny. My dad was really, really funny, and so were my grandparents and extended family. And I know that the reason I survived it all is because of the humor. And interestingly, I married a comedian. What were the chances of a clown marrying a comedian? Because the value of humor is the most important thing, I think, in anyone's life. I mean, in relationships, if you can laugh, you got it. I mean, just being able to see through the dark stuff, see the humor through it all. But it's always been the thread that has kept my family together for as long as it did. I mean, my parents were so not right for each other, and they married so young, and they had 4 kids before my mother was 23 years old, and so there was no time for kids. They were still kids themselves, and so it was challenging, but being able to laugh, I think, kept us together for the 21 years that they were married, which is crazy.
Yeah, and
crazy.
Yeah, and it's not an easy decision for young Catholics to divorce.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, that was a bad time to do that. And my mother actually was expelled from the church. She was not allowed to go back because my father divorced her for another woman. Is therapy over yet? Thanks, Mom. She was not allowed back in the church, so that broke her heart even further than it was. So,
well, to sort of follow up on that question, I've often, but wait, there's more.
I think the time is up.
I've always heard the best comics are the ones that have gone through the hardest experiences. How it takes those kinds of experiences to create the most interesting content for them to expound upon. Given the themes that this show is built on, do you feel that's kind of analogous with your experience as an artist, or do you think that there's room for creating good artwork from really good experiences as well? Like, is there ever an opportunity that in the future we'll see work based off of some Teri Dryden angelic grandchildren?
Well, I have one, so yes, I do. I think that that art doesn't have to come from pain. I mean, my husband is one of the funniest men in the world, and he grew up with a wonderful intact family. And comedians are often always saying, talking about their horrors in their childhood, but he happened to have a wonderful childhood and still has an amazing sense of humor. So I just think that art can be created from anything, because it's just created from what you need to express or what you need to say. And I might do a whole show about my grandchild. Who knows? Yeah.
You're a pretty avid traveler, and you've received multiple Great Meadows Foundation grants to travel abroad, places like Japan and Italy. What other place did you?
I went to Baltimore, back to Baltimore, to see the Joan Mitchell retrospective at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And in about 3 weeks, I'm going to New Orleans with a Great Meadows grant to...
Okay, don't talk too much about that yet.
Okay.
That's a follow-up question. That's a follow-up question. Speaking of Joan Mitchell, I just want to give a shameless plug. We created a personality test. It's on the homepage of our website. If anyone is interested in knowing what type of artwork they should collect but don't know where to start, take this personality quiz. You'll find out what kind of person you are, and there'll be different artists for you to check out. So, shameless plug. Yeah. And Joan Mitchell is one of the options.
Right. And interestingly, I got Joan Mitchell when I took the test, and then it said, well, if you like Joan Mitchell, these are the artists you should look at the gallery. And one of them was me. So I thought, okay, well,
it works.
It's fun. You should do it.
So how does that wanderlust influence your artistic practice? Can we see remnants of those Italy and Japan trips in the work now? Or like counterpoint, are there pieces of parts of your work that may be like directed from your experience living here in Kentucky?
Well, I think that one of the themes that run through most of my work is the wabi-sabi, which says that nothing is permanent, nothing is complete, and nothing is forever. And that is in this show, because I found that love is not always lasting, and family doesn't always complete you, and so that is a Japanese concept that has sort of not just got into my head, but got into my skin. So that, I hope, will be prevalent in my work from now forever, because that's my aesthetic. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of Italy in this, and I do love to travel, and travel inspires me, and it inspires me so much that I kind of take it in when I'm there. And no matter where you go, you can't help but grab onto some of the stuff that you see and come back, and as an artist, it's still in your memory.
Okay, so coming back to New Orleans, you've got a trip coming up, thanks to Great Meadows Foundation. I was wondering if you could tell us what you'll be doing there, what you're planning on getting out of it, in hopes that maybe there's something that we can pick up on that we might be able to, with your work that comes after that trip. Maybe we can start picking out, I bet this is thanks to her New Orleans trip. Okay.
So I'm going to New Orleans for a collage fest, which sounds kind of like a Comic-Con festival or something. But it's basically talks and symposium, not so many workshops, because it's not so much about the work. It's more about being there and seeing things, and panel discussions about collage and its relevance today, because too often I think that collage can be overlooked as sort of a scrapbooking thing, and collage is not that. It goes way back, and there's a lot of amazing collage artists from back in the day. So I'm there to listen and talk about why it's important to further collage as a really good medium in today's art world. So I'll mostly be doing that, and I will meet a lot of different collage artists. So it's kind of like meeting your tribe, rub elbows with somebody I might be friends with on Facebook that whose work I admire, that I get to actually meet in person. And
because you're part of different national
yes, it's an
collage.
international festival. So, and it's 5 days of everything from film to museum shows to visiting galleries, having conversations with artists in a formal and an informal setting, and eating a lot of raw oysters.
Well, and I think collage media is passes due for,
I think so.
Of like, by and large, just, things in other parts of our culture with music sampling, for example, it's essentially just audio collaging, sort of thing. So, okay, so my last questions, I was wondering if you could pick out maybe a couple pieces that you could share some stories behind the work.
Sure.
And if you don't want to get too personal about the specific ones, if there's like adjacent stories about the subject matter of the work or something. People love hearing what's behind.
Does anybody have a question about any of the pieces that they might want to?
Well, what about that?
Okay. She was all lilacs and cigarettes. That's my mother. That is actually my mother. And she married my father when she was 16. She had me when she was 18. And she did the best she could. And but where this came from was she's a cigarette smoker forever, still is. She loved lilacs, and where we grew up, we had just this enormous fence line of all purple lilacs except one white one, and she used to cut the white one and bring them into the house all the time in our tiny little house, and that was always pristine, clean, not beautiful, but had lilacs in every room, and so that's kind of an homage to my mama. And
how about this one? You can see it.
Oh gosh. Okay, this
in the pink boots or whatever.
Okay, this is about the death of loved ones. My favorite aunt, Valerie, who was my mom's youngest sister, we were very close when we were growing up. She was like my big sister. She was murdered. And I never got over it. I know her mother didn't. I know her sisters didn't. And interestingly, you had asked me on a thing about ghosts. You said, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And I said, "I used to until I tried to summon my Aunt Valerie, and she never talked to me. So I know that there's no such thing as ghosts because we were so close that she would have." But that's really, she was here for just too short of she died when she was 21. So she was an angel just passing through. And so that's an homage to her and everybody who loses someone in their life early on or later on.
Okay. Well, I lied. So I said a couple pieces, but I would like to hear just a little bit more about the quilt piece. That's so
okay.
different from the rest of your panel pieces.
So this is really the show. This is the House of Paper. A quilt, of course, represents home and family and security and covering up, and that's with paper. I made it looking very nice and pristine, and I had it on a wall, and I thought, okay, well, this is kind of nice, but that's not really what that is about. So I started tearing the edges and fraying them as much as I could because that's more my family quilt. It wasn't a perfect family. We had a lot of holes. we had frayed edges, and we didn't always stay. I didn't feel safe all the time, and I didn't feel warm and comfortable. So that to me is a metaphor for my whole upbringing as a child. And but it's still beautiful to me.
Real quick, is there anything coming up that you'd like to promote? Goings on, or?
I have a new grandbaby, but he's a year old now, so we can't talk about that. I can't think of anything right now because oh, yes. So I have a new studio, and my studio mates, any of my studio mates here, Paige and Gretchen. Okay, so we have a studio over on
Lexington,
and it's right across from Lots of Pasta, so you know exactly where it is. And there are 8 of us in there, and we each have a beautiful space where we can work, and then we have an open space where we can show our work. And there is a show coming up next week that I am not part of, but Paige and it is 5 to 8. Be there. You can see some beautiful work. I will be there just, to support my studio mates. So I hope you can come for the reception that is there. And then I'll be in New Orleans.
Does anyone have any questions for Teri while you've got her cornered?
Have you ever taught?
I taught preschool. That's why I use my hands a lot.
And will you?
I don't know. I'm still so involved in wanting to create it that I feel like it would move me out of that area.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you all for joining us.